Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. Today, we're going to be going over Week 13 NFL Pick'em. All right, let's get right into it. So, the first game, 1 o'clock, Bengals versus Jets. My projection is that the Jets come out on top, 26-20. I think it'll be maybe a little closer than people might think because, the Bengals turned back to Andy Dalton, after Ryan Finley, who over the past 3 games, he's averaged 11 points per game. It's just been kind of pathetic. I think I think it was a good thing that they were trying to, understand the talent that they had at quarterback position, but it just didn't work out. And I think Andy Dalton's actually pretty good for this team. I think he's an average, maybe even above average quarterback if he has the right pieces around him, but it's just a bad team. And yeah, I think and the Bengals, they've averaged 18 points with Dalton, so just a big difference there. The Jets, however, it's kind of a different story for them over the last couple of weeks. They had a 34-3 against the Raiders last week, which I don't think anybody saw coming. It was a huge win for them, and I think the whole team was just playing super well. However, I'm a little concerned that it was a bit of a fluke because I don't think that they can just do that every single week. I don't think the Jets team is good enough, but I still think that people are maybe a little bit underrating this Jets team. I think they've put something good together, better than people may have thought going into the season. But, the Jets, they've ranked 31st in the NFL in total yards per game, and passing yards per game and rushing yards per game. They've scored 34 points in each of their past 3 games. So that's impressive for any team to do that. So good for the Jets there. But the AJ Green remains out for the Bengals, and I don't know. I think it'll be tough to see because Andy Dalton, maybe he can find something special though, because I guess the team might be ready to rally around him. They want to have Andy Dalton succeed, but in order for them to do that, I think that Tyler Boyd must get involved, but he can't be the only guy. We saw Tyler Boyd have some great catches. He's a great receiver, and I think we all know that, but we need to see another guy step up. I think Alex Erickson could be that guy. In the past couple of weeks, he's been playing his role really well, as I've seen, and I think that'll really need to continue if they have a chance here. I really don't think this team wants to go 0-16. I think they're better than an 0-16 team. Maybe this can be their chance against a below-average Jets team, but it'll be tough because Darnold has been getting his groove. He's kind of not too many targets he's spreading it out to, but the ones he has, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, Le'Veon Bell, they're all getting involved in the passing game, and it's been really successful for them. So that'll be tough for the Bengals if they're going to take the Jets out of this groove that they're in right now. I could see the Bengals pulling it off, but again, I have the Jets winning 26-20. Closer than some might think. Maybe you think that it might be a little closer, but yeah, that's what I think. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game, but it won't be as bad as everyone thinks. So yeah, that's that game. And now let's move on to the AFC South battle this week, I guess, for second place, maybe if the Texans lose first place, but Titans at the Colts. And I have the Titans, who are red hot right now, coming into Indianapolis and winning 24-20. This team last week, they crushed the Jaguars 42-20. It was a great performance just by all around on that Titans team. It was really impressive, and I think this Titans team just keeps proving people wrong. And they proved me wrong too. I was not expecting them this whatsoever. But Tannehill, he started in the last 5 games for the Titans. They're 4-1, which is amazing because this team right now is, I believe, 6-5. So yeah, they were 2-5 before Tannehill came in, or 2-4, sorry. But yeah, I think it was just a breath of fresh air that Titans team needed. One of those games was against the Chiefs, and they won against the Jaguars, Chargers, who they both have tougher pass defenses. So I don't see why the Colts defense should be too much of a problem for them. They're good, but not great. That's just how I think about the whole Colts team. But I think the Titans team, they could surprise people. Like, they're good in every aspect, passing, running the ball. Derrick Henry, he's kind of having a run right now. But I think that this game, Derrick Henry might slow down a little bit as the Colts are eighth against the run. And the Titans, they'll probably, yeah, again, they'll have to rely on the pass. The Colts defense hasn't been as good against the pass as it has been against the run. So, yeah, maybe we'll see Adam Humphries and A.J. Brown, young receivers, step up. I really hope they do because I like those guys. I think a bunch of pieces on this Titans team make it very good that most of us may not have seen coming into this year. But I think Tannehill, the Colts have allowed the eighth most rushing yards to quarterbacks through this season, and Tannehill, over the last couple games, he's actually surprisingly been able to get some yards on the ground, which good to see there. But I'm gonna say Tannehill, don't force to run, but if it's there, I think it's there, and he should take advantage of it. On the other hand, though, Jacoby Brissett and the Colts, who are kind of struggling right now, Brissett has only thrown one touchdown over their last 4 games, and so that just kind of shows you how the Colts have been playing recently. Not terrible, but just not great all around. The Titans secondary, however, like they played well last week. DJ Chark was shut down by Dory Jackson, and now with T.Y. Hilton and Eric Ebron gone, I think that this passing game with Jacoby Brissett is going to really struggle a lot. And the Colts will most likely have to rely on the run, but it's just without Marlon Mack, so just another injury there. Jonathan Williams, he's had a couple good games, and I think he's a good running back, but he's not Marlon Mack, I'll say that. So I think he'll most likely have to carry a lot of the load for this game. And when Jonathan Williams ends up having to carry a lot of your load, I don't think you're so great off. But yeah, injuries just have rattled this Colts team. And therefore, I think that it's just a bad matchup for the Colts this week. And I think the Tennessee Titans will move on to 7-5. And the Colts will move down to 6-6, really separating the Titans and the Texans as the best 2 teams of that AFC South. And having the Titans compete for that 6th seed in the playoffs there. Maybe even for that AFC South title. All right. Yeah, that's the AFC South matchup. Now let's move on to the Eagles versus the Dolphins, where I think this is a huge game for the Eagles, and I do have them winning 31-17. The Eagles last week, they just looked terrible. They couldn't do anything on offense against Seattle. Like, they put up 9 points, just couldn't score. Their defense held Seattle to 17, which is very impressive, but it just can't be like made up for with the bad offense. And I mean, thankfully, good for the Eagles. I mean, the Cowboys lost on Thanksgiving to the Bills, keeping them in playoff contention somehow. That division is just horrible. The leader is the Cowboys at 6-6, but yeah, I think this is a must-win for the Eagles. If they lose this, I just don't know what to say anymore. Because it's the Dolphins, come on. But, I mean, the Eagles defense, again, just going back, they've only allowed 15 points per game in the last 4 games, which is good. And the Dolphins have an atrocious defense. I think, like, maybe this could be a get-right game for this Eagles offense. They could get some momentum because we all know Wentz, he's good, but he really hasn't looked like the Wentz we all know and love as of late. So hopefully he can be restored to the Wentz we all know. And I think that this is a good opportunity for that to happen. Yeah, I have the Eagles, again, winning 31-17 in this one. But the Dolphins I don't think the Dolphins really want to win this game. I mean, they've been playing hard, but not great. And I think they're not as bad as the worst couple teams, the Redskins and the Bengals of the league. But they're decently coached, but the Eagles are just better coached. They have more talent. I think it's just a recipe for success for this Eagles team, and they should be able to come out with a win this week. All right. Yeah, that's all I have to say that game. Again, Eagles win 31-17 and keep in contention for the NFC East title. All right, so now let's move on to this game. The Packers versus Giants. I have the Packers winning, getting that win that'll keep them in position to lead the NFC North. They're going to win 21-13 against the Giants. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game as New York, New Jersey area. I know that it's going to be snowing. I'm pretty sure over the tomorrow, so that could be a factor. I think if it wasn't, then it would be a little higher scoring. But yeah, 21-13, not too low scoring, but certainly not high scoring by any means. I think that it shouldn't be any doubt that the Packers are going to win this game. If they don't, that is not good for them. But after like the last couple losses, I mean, they lost last week. They got destroyed by the 49ers. But like earlier in the season, they lost to the Eagles and the Chargers, and they came back and won both of the games after those. So yeah, they won against the Cowboys the week after, and then the Panthers the week after the Chargers game. So they've seemed to respond well to losses, and I think that's going to continue, especially against a weaker Giants team that they should have no problem beating. If they lose, then they're in jeopardy of giving up that division to the Vikings, who play Seattle on Monday night. But Daniel Jones, he like the Smith brothers are probably really eager to take some shots at Daniel Jones, as in his first 9 starts, he's just been a turnover machine almost. He's thrown 8 interceptions and fumbled 10 times. So if the Smith brothers can get to Daniel Jones, just make him uncomfortable all night, it will be a really good way for them to win this game, get some confidence back on defense, because at the start of the season, we were all saying that this defense was one of the better defenses in the league, and so far, like recently, it really hasn't looked like it. Like last week, even though it was against the 49ers, who are a good team, you can't let teams put up 38 on you and consider yourself to be a great defense. But again, it's all about momentum, and I think this could be a game where the Packers regain some of that momentum. Yeah, I just don't see the Giants winning this one, and if the Packers lose this game, it's going to be really hard to consider them competitors anymore, because 2 times in the last 3 weeks, they've really struggled. They got crushed by the Chargers, who have not been good at whatsoever, and then just were pathetic. One of the worst games of Aaron Rodgers' careers against the 49ers last week. And I think the only way that the Giants are able to win this game is if they really get that short passing game going with Slayton and Shepard, but that's really the only way because of the snow. So yeah, I mean, Aaron Jones and Saquon in the snow should be fun to watch, but I don't think the game will be fun to watch whatsoever. Yeah, so that's it for that game. I think Packers again will win 21-13 against the Giants. Okay, now let's move on to the AFC North, showdown, where the Browns are going to play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I think that the Browns are going to come away with this game, 23-17. This is a tense game from that Mason Rudolph Myles Garrett fight from Thursday night a couple weeks ago, and I think since then, in the last couple weeks, just the Browns' offense has finally gotten together. They're more of what we expected earlier this season. Delvin Hodges, they put up 41 against the Dolphins. Sure, it was against the Dolphins, but putting up 41 against anybody is pretty impressive. The Steelers, on the other hand, last week, Delvin Hodges replaced Mason Rudolph. Mike Tomlin, I guess he had seen enough, and same with me. I think Mason Rudolph was probably the worst QB in the league at that point, and Delvin Hodges, I don't think he's much better. Again, just another breath of fresh air for the Steelers team in general. And yeah, I think Delvin Hodges, he's not a bad quarterback, not a good quarterback, but he's better than Mason Rudolph, but not by much. If the Steelers want to win this game, they will really need to limit mistakes, play really good defense, because the Browns are just a much better offensive team right now. And like the offense of the Steelers, I don't think is going to be able to win a shootout game against this Browns team, which is much more dynamic with much more pieces. But especially with James Conner and Juju Smith out, it'll be tough for the Steelers offense, I think, to make big plays. We did see Benny Snell step up last week, nearly 100 yards on the ground. But right now, the Steelers hold the 6th spot in the AFC playoff picture. I expect that to be given up to the Titans, because I think the Titans are deserving of being in the playoffs right now. But I guess the Browns are really also trying to make a run at that 6 seed. They're gonna really have to make a big run, and if they lose another game, I think that'll just be detrimental to their chances at that. But again, the only way I see the Steelers winning this game if they can make big, like a couple of those big plays like we saw last week on the second snap of Delvin Hodges. I think that's like to James Washington for 78 yards. I think that's the only way. Or maybe just a grit and grind game where the Steelers defense just shows out, absolutely just makes Baker Mayfield uncomfortable, doesn't allow them to get anything done in the passing game. But I think Pittsburgh's definitely the stronger defense in my opinion, especially with Myles Garrett out on the Browns side of things. But as long as Baker Mayfield keeps up the good chemistry with his receivers, I think the Browns should win this game. Again, my prediction is 23 Browns at Steelers 17. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen in these AFC North showdown here. So yeah, now let's move on to the next game. I don't think this game is not going to be a close one in my opinion, but this is Redskins at Panthers. Panthers 27. I have Panthers winning 27-13 against the Redskins, so I think the line is about 9.5 here. I expect the Panthers to well cover that. And yeah, the Panthers, they looked good last week against the Saints, who are, in my opinion, one of the best teams in the league. They lost 34-31, so solid outing for them. Kyle Allen, he returned to more like the form of his first 4 starts where he was playing really well. And he was struggling over these last couple of weeks, but last game, he was putting up good numbers. I expect DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey to have very big games. The Redskins' just defense as a whole is pathetic. Well, I guess like the team as a whole is pretty pathetic, but yeah. DJ Moore, 2 games in a row, he's had 100 more receiving yards. So I think that streak by the end of Sunday could easily get to 3 because I think it'll be a big game for him. And then McCaffrey probably just put on another fantasy spectacular show. So yeah, I mean maybe Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen even could be pieces in this win for the Panthers. Not saying that the Panthers are gonna like toy around with the Redskins, but I think they could have some fun out there. You know, it's a team that has been losing for a little bit, and I think it'll be good for them to finally get some momentum, have a big, like not a big win against speaking in terms of the opponent, but a big win in terms of like emotional feeling of finally getting a win. But I mean, the Redskins are coming off a win against the Lions last week, but I think that was just more about the Lions playing a awful game than it was the Redskins playing a good one. Dwayne Haskins, I think, should get ready to get hit hard and often because the front 7 of the Panthers, I think, is actually kind of underrated. I think they're better than people might think, and yeah. I just don't see a way that the Panthers lose this week, and I think it's kind of unfortunate that this team is in the NFC, where the playoff picture is just so out of reach for most teams. I think the only team that's really in the hunt is the Eagles, and that's because their division is so bad, because that wild card is filled with Seattle and who's 9-2, and Minnesota who's 8-3. So those, but if this Panthers team was in the AFC, I think that they definitely could have a shot at making that playoffs. So yeah, I expect the Redskins to get a touchdown, but I don't think that they'll I think it'll be later in the game, and I think by that point they're just getting the game will be long over. And so again, I have Panthers winning 27-13. I don't see this game being close whatsoever. Not too exciting here, but the Panthers will get some momentum, and I think we'll see a little more from Kyle Allen that I will like, and hopefully he plays a good game. So yeah, next game we have 2 teams here, one from the AFC, one from the NFC. The Jaguars versus the Buccaneers, 2 teams that are kind of very similar. I think this line started as a pick'em line, and I think that's perfectly fair. These teams are very similar teams, not too great, but they have the ability to be great on any given week. Last week, the Jaguars were crushed by the Buccaneers, 42-20. By the Titans, and I think just as a whole they looked off, except for Leonard Fournette actually. He had a big game. He had 97 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, But I think that is probably going to be flipped this week. The Buccaneers, they have the second best rush defense in the league, and I expect them to limit Fournette's production heavily and make the Jaguars rely on the passing game, which isn't really a bad thing against the Buccaneers because they have the second worst passing game in the league, so second best running game or running defense. But the Buccaneers have the second worst passing defense in the league, and they've just been a target for fantasy owners all year. And yeah, DJ Chark last week he had a rough game against the Titans. He was slowed down by Adoree Jackson. He really didn't do anything, as he's the number one receiver for this Jacksonville team, hands down. But I expect him to really get things going this game, get a couple big plays downfield. So if you have DJ Chark and you're questioning whether to start him or not in your fantasy league, definitely go ahead and start him because I think he's going to have, maybe one or even two of those big bomb touchdowns that we all love to see. The Jaguars, on the other hand, do have a top 10 best defense in the league, but I think the Buccaneers kind of shown us that they can really put up points against anyone. They really are a good scoring team, but their defense is just so bad that it's hard to pick for them because they're not consistent whatsoever on that side of the ball. Godwin had a big game last week, but I expect this game to be more of a Mike Evans show. We see kind of like they flip-flop in terms of who's good. One week it'll be Godwin, one week it'll be Mike Evans. Again, I think this is just a deadly combination. You leave one open, you try to stop one, and the other one's open and goes for a big game. But as always, I just am going to expect Jameis Winston to turn the ball over. And for me, that's the difference in the game. I think are the turnovers. I have Jacksonville winning 31-28, and I think teams are very similar, but I think it's going to come down to the team that makes less mistakes, and I think that team is going to be Jacksonville. So I think it's going to be 31-28 in Jacksonville's favor. Yep. So now, a lot of people are considering this to be game of the week, maybe even game of the year potential, and that is 49ers at Ravens. And I think these are the two hottest teams in the NFL right now. The 49ers and the Ravens have just been playing out of their heads recently. And I have the Ravens keeping their streak going. I have them winning 27-20. They're not going to just steamroll the 49ers like they have been steamrolling teams recently. But I think that the Ravens will probably control this game. I think that's what they're built to do. They get a lead and then keep it, and that's what they've been showing that they have done. The 49ers, they just destroyed the Packers 37-8. The Ravens over the last 5 games have outscored their opponents 202-62, which is like unheard of. They came off of a rout of the Rams 45-6. The Rams just couldn't do anything all night. But I think a lot is on the line here. More than just pride and momentum, but in the playoff races, like the 49ers hold the division from Seattle, but if Seattle gets a win on Monday night, and the 49ers lose here, then Seattle takes over that number 1 seed, and the 49ers go down into the wild card. So that's a huge gap right there. But the Ravens look to remain competitive for the 1 seed as well, because New England has a tough matchup with Houston this weekend. So they could get that number 1 seed as they have the tiebreaker over New England. The 49ers, they have the best pass defense of the league. They've only allowed 136 yards in the air per game. I think that's a lot not as much due to the corners, but I think it's more due to those 4 guys up front who just have, make quarterbacks miserable. They just are always up in their face. But I'm wondering how it's going to fare with Lamar Jackson, who just seems to, evade pressure effortlessly. So will the 49ers front 7 be able to get after Lamar Jackson, or will Lamar Jackson kind of make neutralize that advantage of having those big, fast front 7 guys? So we'll have to see. I'm very excited to watch that. However, if the 49ers do have a weakness, I think it's the rush game, where they aren't first. They rank 19th. They let up 4.7 yards a rush. I mean, it's not really a huge weakness for them, but unfortunately for them, I think the Ravens are going to look to take advantage of this weakness maybe, as they have the number 1 rushing attack in the league so far. They have 210 rushing yards per game, which is 65 more than the next highest in the league, which happens to be the 49ers. The 49ers average 145. So, yeah, both extremely dynamic rushing games, but the difference here, I think, is the Ravens' rushing defense ranks third in the league as opposed to 19th in the league. I think if you look at the Ravens' pass defense, you can say, oh, they're 19th against the pass. But I think those numbers are a little bit deceiving because I think they're weighted a little more from the start of the season. But ever since they acquired Marcus Peters in that secondary, he seemed to be a spark. And I think this pass defense has been up there with the very best in terms in the league. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to watch there. But another thing to look out for is that against the 49ers, mobile quarterbacks have kind of been an issue for them. They struggled twice against Kyler Murray as they just squeaked out victories both times. And then their one loss on the season was to Russell Wilson, who, yes, he's a great passer also, but he's a very mobile quarterback. And you can also say, though, Lamar Jackson has been up there with the best of them in terms of throwing recently. So I think it could be a scary trend for the 49ers. We'll see how that works out. The weather conditions, however, they look to be rainy. Maybe even sleety in Baltimore. It's going to be cold Baltimore weather. And it'll be tough because the 49ers are coming over to the East Coast. And that's like them playing at 10 in the morning in their time. I did see a stat, however, that said West Coast teams coming to the East Coast at 1 o'clock this year are 10-2. So, I mean, maybe for the 49ers it's a good thing. But, yeah, I think we'll see even more running the ball due to these bad conditions. But we'll have to see. I think it'll be a matter of who comes more prepared. John Harbaugh, Kyle Shanahan, both really good head coaches, and I expect to see a really great game here. I think that the 49ers will not stop the Ravens team, but they'll certainly slow them down. And I think because the Ravens are at home and they've just recently looked invincible, I think the 49ers will give the Ravens a run for their money, but it won't be quite enough in M&T Bank Stadium. My final score, just one more time, is 27-20 Ravens. Okay, so next we have the Rams at Arizona, the NFC West matchup here. The Rams, who are coming off just getting destroyed by the Ravens last week, and Arizona, who's off a bye. So, oh yeah, what a perfect transition, actually. The Rams, who got crushed by the team we were just talking about, the Ravens. But I think that they're going to bounce back. I feel like they're just going to be a little bit obligated to do this. Everyone's really been talking about them, and they just have been poor performing these last couple weeks, and I think this is the week that they finally get their act together. The Cardinals are a good team in my opinion, not a great team. And I think that for the Cardinals, I think you will see a big day in the passing game, in my opinion. I think like the Cardinals, veteran, obviously Larry Fitzgerald, young receiver, Christian Kirk, and then kind of like a hidden gem, Andy Isabella, who's been quietly producing for this Cardinals team recently. Jalen Ramsey, who we all know the Rams acquired earlier this year, will probably shut down one of those guys. So I think Andy Isabella will need to step forward and be a leader on the offensive side of the ball if the Cardinals really want to get going, and it'll be good to see because he's young and could be a good receiver for a long time in this league. I think the Cardinals offense has been okay when rushing the ball, but that's mostly because of Kyler Murray. I don't think like their rushing team, David Johnson just seemed to like fall off the map this year. They traded for Kenyon Drake, and it's just not really worked out. Chase Edmonds either. But yeah, I'm a little nervous for Kyler Murray though. Aaron Donald, who was held to nothing last week against the Ravens, I think he's going to want to get back to doing what he's known for doing, and that's just being a game wrecker. I think Kyler Murray is just going to be getting pressure all night. I mean, all game long by Aaron Donald and the rest of that Rams team. I think they're going to come out with a little bit of fire and vengeance to prove people wrong. So, yeah. So that's what I think about that Rams-Cardinals game. I think that the Rams, again, are going to come out firing. They're going to have a big game. So, yeah. All right. Now let's move on to the AFC West matchup. We went from the NFC West, and now we're going to the AFC West, where the Chargers are playing in Mile High Stadium. I and I have the Chargers coming back off of their bye, 20-17 in this game. They lost their second straight game back in Mexico City against the Chiefs, and I think they're going to look to regain momentum after this bye week with the divisional clash against the Denver Broncos. But if the Chargers lose this game, I think they should just be eliminated altogether from playoff consideration, as they're kind of hovering down there with like the Browns and stuff in terms of, teams that could, I guess you could say, make it, but it'll be really a stretch for them to do so. I think the Broncos would love to play spoiler in this game. It's a division rival, but we'll have to see. Drew Lock is starting for the Broncos, who's I've seen and heard that he's a very accurate quarterback, and I think it could be a little spark for this Broncos team. Cortland Sutton is a very talented receiver. Maybe he could get involved if Lock is able to get him involved. So yeah, I think it's a good thing for the Broncos to put Lock in, and I think the Chargers, everyone really had high expectations because the team just has undeniable talent, and I think they've just been hit so hard with injuries. We see Derwin James, though, returning this week for the Chargers to give that secondary a little bit of a boost. Phillip Rivers, I think, will really need to get back to himself because he's been looking like another, I guess, Jameis Winston out there, throwing for 300 yards and 3 interceptions, but mistakes just won't win you football games in the NFL. But I think that the Chargers this week will get back on track and will narrowly beat the Broncos 20-17, solely because I think the Chargers are just a better team than the Broncos. We saw the Broncos have a pathetic outing last week against the Bills, 20-3. So yeah, I expect a little bit of a closer game than it was last week. But yeah. So let's move on to another division matchup in the AFC West. This one matters a little bit more, these top two teams. The Raiders at the Chiefs in Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium. I think that Chiefs coming off a bye with Andy Reid, 28-23 is my projection for this game. I think that this game will really decide if the Raiders are going to contend for the AFC West or not. And even maybe if they're going to contend for that AFC, if they get blown out again, then it could be a bad sign for those Raiders fans and just the Raiders team as a whole because of how terribly they played last week against the Jets. They lost 3-34. They looked horrible, just in every way you could look bad. I think, yeah, but the Chiefs are coming off a bye with Andy Reid. There's not much more of an advantage that you can have. Andy Reid is just like almost nobody. Arguably Belichick is better off a bye than Andy Reid is. So hopefully we see him show out with his team this week. But I think if the Raiders really want to have a chance, they're really going to need to. The receivers can't drop balls. They need to cut down on mistakes. The run game will need to be used a lot to control the game, I think. They need to keep the Chiefs off the field. But on defense, they just need to get to Patrick Mahomes. Crosby put up 5 sacks 2 weeks ago. He needs to come back alive. The defense last week just could not get to Sam Darnold, and you could not give Mahomes time to throw because that is where those big plays to Tyreek Hill and those other speedsters on that Chiefs team come from. You got to just get to him, tackle him, not allow those big plays. And that is always the key when you're playing the Chiefs team. But I think that the Raiders I think they'll put up a good fight in this game, but I think with the Chiefs off a bye, it'll be really tough for them to take them down. So again, the score of this game for me is the Chiefs are going to win 28-23 at home against the Raiders. All right, let's move on to Sunday Night Football, where the Patriots are going into Houston to play the Texans. Great game here. We got a dynamic duo in Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins on offense, and then we have probably the best defense in the league, the Patriots, maybe the 49ers, who just have been just stopping offenses left and right. And yeah, I am actually going to project an upset here in Houston. I'm projecting the Texans win by 1, 24-23, and I think it's going to be a great game for them. The Patriots offense, as I just said, their defense has been great, but their offense has been struggling recently. Tom Brady admits it even. They just have kind of looked flat. against Dallas, the one touchdown they scored was because the defense got an interception at the 20-yard line. Um, Now, also, I heard that there was an illness in that Patriots locker room going around. Big names like Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy, Stephon Gilmore are all questionable to sickness, so that defense really could take huge hits if those guys don't play. I expect them to play, but, it's still a question mark. But, yeah, and then also Julian Edelman, Mohamed Sanu are also questionable due to injury. And if those players don't play, then it should just be a much bigger struggle on offense than it already is for the Patriots. I think the key matchup in this game is obvious, and that's DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore held Cooper to 0 receptions in their game, which was his first time as a Cowboy being held to 0 receptions. So yeah, this week we got the best receiver in the league, arguably, or Michael Thomas, versus the best corner. And I'm excited for this matchup. I think everybody should be. But yeah, I think the reason for me picking this upset is just the ability for Houston to put points on the board. And they're just a dynamic duo. And Deshaun Watson, he's had 2 poor games in a row, and I think he's due for a good game. I'm ready to see some big plays from Deshaun Watson. Will Fuller, I think he's going to have a good game. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 100-plus yards, and he caught maybe a touchdown or 2. So I'm expecting big things from Will Fuller, as DeAndre Hopkins is going to be guarded by Gilmore. And yeah, I think definitely key matchup here is Texans offense versus Patriots defense, but I think it'll be a close game, but I just don't think that Patriots offense is going to be able to keep up with this Patriots defense. Patriots offense is going to be able to keep up with this Texans offense this week. And yeah, that'll have the Patriots fall to 10-2, and the Texans will become 8-4. So yeah, let's move on to Monday Night Football, last game of the week. If you're still listening, thank you so much for listening. But here we got Seahawks at Vikings. This game, I'm predicting a high-scoring game here. I think Seahawks win 34-28 in Minnesota. And even though Minnesota's been a really tough place to play, the Seahawks have been really good on the road this year. They've been, I'm pretty sure, undefeated on the road this year, which is shocking because most people, they have. Oh wait, sorry. Seattle is playing at home, but most people say that stadium in Seattle is one of the hardest places to play, and I agree. Russell Wilson, he's MVP candidate. I think he's going to have a big game, getting the ball to Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. They're going to be making big plays, and this could be, I think this could be limited by the Vikings defense, who just is just above average. They rank 13th in pass defense this season. But I think the Vikings will most likely want to win a game here, where they control the game with Dalvin Cook, the running game. But I don't think Seattle's going to let that happen. I think Seattle's going to want to win a game by just more pass-oriented, just throwing the ball down the field, because that's what we've seen from the Seattle team. Good coaching. But right now, the Vikings are tied with the Packers for first in their division. And yeah, but the Seahawks are in second place. They're in the wild card right now, 5th spot. 9-2. They have the tiebreaker over San Francisco, so they're one game ahead. But San Francisco could very well lose to Baltimore. And if the Seahawks win and the 49ers lose, the Seahawks will become the number 1 team in the NFC. So I think it's going to be a motivation game for them. They're looking to come out here and perform. And I think it'll be a good game. We have seen the Vikings in prime time. It's not always pretty. So, yeah, let me take Pete Carroll and the Seahawks in their house, 34-28. All right, that was the last game. So, thank you guys so much for listening. Yeah, that's about all I have to say. All right, until next time. Goodbye.